Paul Rubens very kindly reached out to me and offered to send me one of their new watercolor palettes, which I was so excited about because a very long time ago they also sent me their original palette and I absolutely loved it. I actually just went through and rewatched the video I made about it because it has been a very long time since then, but I had nothing negative to say. I was super ecstatic about the palette. Everything was super high quality. The paints themselves were like gorgeous, fantastic. The paint palette is beautiful, and I am happy to say that this one is pretty much the same for me. I don't have anything negative to say about this watercolor palette. This is their kind of like floral palette version, so it does have a couple of repeat colors compared to their original palette. It only has 7 repeats, so 17 of these are all new colors that aren't included in the other one, so that way it does kind of make it a good deal. Even if you do have the original Paul Rubens palette, at least with this one you're only getting a couple repeats and everything else is going to be a new color and different pigments in it. These paints themselves, only 4 of them are multiple pigment paints. The other 20 are single pigments, which is super nice for watercolors because the more separate pigments you have to make a specific paint, when you're mixing it with other colors, it can get muddy pretty fast versus when you're working with single pigments. It's a lot easier to avoid any kind of muddiness in the color when you're mixing. And these paints are so pretty. I wasn't sure when I initially got it how different the color selection was going to be from the original palette, but it is so insane. And also the set has like really gorgeous greens. Really gorgeous greens. So I was so excited to swatch this. Paul Rubens has always also had like absolutely gorgeous packaging for their art supplies, both the exterior packaging and the actual physical materials that the art supplies are in themselves have always been so pretty. I have several of their different palettes. I've used their original palette, a palette that has a bunch of metallic paints in it, and this one, and then I've also used a couple different kinds of their papers. I have a couple sketchbooks from them that are also in the same like really pretty pastel pink, and then I've also gotten some other watercolor paper from them that's in a paper pad, and again it's so pretty. They just have like really luxurious feeling art supplies, so it makes the experience so much nicer of using these. I especially really like anything that's pink. Pink has been my favorite color for the longest time, although green is like combating that right now. I'm also like a really big green girly right now, but I love pinks so much. But that being said, at this point in time in my art journey, I do have a ton of pink palettes, and especially with the packaging of this one where it's like this really gorgeous, like slightly more purple than a periwinkle maybe color, where it's so pretty. I was really hoping that the actual palette itself would be that color and was like a little disappointed that it wasn't. I just have like a handful of pink palettes right now because I have my other Paul Rubens palettes. I have a couple of meet-in palettes that I bought that were just blank palettes that I filled with my own watercolors. So it's really popping off in the pink palette department, and especially for Paul Rubens, who has multiple different kinds of palettes. Like I said, my original Paul Rubens watercolor palette and my glitter watercolor palette, both of those are still in the same pink tin. I would love to see them in the future maybe do like different colors, at least like pastel colors, because it would still fit the really like light cute theme, but that's just a really minimal thing. I think honestly, if anything, that's the only thing I have any gripe with, any qualms with this palette, because everything else was just like really fantastic. As you can see in swatching these colors, everything is so vibrant and so beautiful. This has such a gorgeous color selection. I was really happy with all of the greens. There are some really fantastic poopy greens in this set, and I love poopy greens. The olive green is probably my favorite independent pigment in this set. It's just a really nice poopy desaturated, almost kind of like a brownie green. She's beautiful. I really love her. The brown selection is also really good, and then the indigo that comes in this set is honestly probably my favorite color in this set in general. It's so beautiful. I've also been having insane Madoka Magica brain rot lately. I feel like I go through phases of forgetting I have Madoka Magica brain rot and then going right back into it. And currently I'm at the point in time where I'm going right back into it. So all we are painting today is just Madoka Magica themed art, which I had so much fun doing. I've been trying to get back into doing more traditional art lately, and it's been pretty successful for me, honestly. I haven't done a ton. I would love to do more, but I have been making a lot of art regardless. ridiculous, and I'm happy to say I'm kind of getting close to finishing the sketchbook I'm working on, which is so nice because especially because I guess I haven't really been doing like a ton of traditional art. The size of the sketchbook has been really intimidating to me lately, and theoretically I could work on another sketchbook at the same time that's a smaller size, but I just feel like with the amount of traditional art I'm putting out, I just want to get this one done, and then I can move on to whatever sketchbooks I want to work on. I've mentioned, I think recently, I want to try an ELO sketchbook again because I've been really itching for a square sketchbook, and although I had a lot of negative things to say about the paper when I did my sketchbook tour, a lot of people have told me that they've improved the paper and changed the paper. And so I'm persuaded. I'm going to try another ELO sketchbook. That might be my next sketchbook. I don't know. But I haven't been doing a lot of watercolor painting lately. And so it was really fun to step back into this. And anytime I personally have a long break between using watercolors, whether it be I'm distracted with another medium or I'm just not doing a lot of traditional work, falling back into using watercolors is so comforting and always feels like such a good experience for me. I think no matter what, it's always going to be like my top favorite medium as a whole. I think the finished product of watercolors is so lovely, and there's a certain aspect of uncertainty when working with watercolors where sometimes your colors might bleed into each other on accident, or the way that they actually sit when they dry isn't necessarily exactly what you intended. And so that level of just stuff happens when using watercolors, and you're not entirely in control, although you can manipulate a lot of things. But I just feel like it's a very pleasurable experience working with watercolors, and I had such a fun time painting with these paints. Like I said, the color selection is absolutely gorgeous. I do feel slightly bad because I really didn't showcase the bright colors in this palette with the pieces that I painted. Everything was not necessarily desaturated, but it wasn't showcasing how vibrant the pigments in this set are, because there are some really, really bright colors, especially when we get into like the warm colors in this palette. There's absolutely gorgeous pinks, reds, oranges, and yellows. Such pretty colors, and I really didn't use a ton of those. I stayed with more neutral colors, but you're able to get such a wide variety of colors with this palette, especially because most of the colors inside are single pigments. You can just like mix like crazy and get whatever you want. I do think this is a fantastic palette regardless of your skill level with watercolors, because they are professional paints. They are like on the quote-unquote pricier side. This palette itself retails currently on Amazon for like a little under $45 US dollars, which is a decent amount of money, but for a 24 pan palette, that's still actually like a really good price considering you're getting professional paints. Paul Rubens also does have tube watercolors, which I really want to try in the future. They have a lot of different products that I really want to try. I just keep talking myself out of it because I'm like, do I want to like spend $40 on watercolors to try that I probably won't use too much? Because one, I'm not making a ton of traditional art, and two, I love my like main watercolor palette, and I know I don't tend to stray from my absolute favorites too much over time. So I'm like, do I want to like buy myself some fancy watercolors, or do I want to keep paying off my credit card? Because they have a really, really pretty set that I've been eyeing for a long time of just like 6 tubes of granulating watercolors. They look so pretty. I think eventually I'll have to cave and treat myself to them, but I've been having like weird guilt with buying art supplies lately. That's sick and that's twisted. I wish I could be wild and free, but unfortunately capitalism is evil, and I'm trying to be an adult and pay off my credit cards. Also, I don't know if I've talked about this on YouTube, but my favorite watercolor brushes have changed. They used to be the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes, which by all means, I still love these brushes, and I have them in a ton of different sizes, so I still use them regularly. They're really nice. They're pretty affordable. They're generally within, I want to say, mind you, this is totally off the top of my head and it's been a long time since I bought one, but I want to say per brush, they generally range between like $3 to $10 a brush, maybe a little bit cheaper than that, maybe more for more expensive ones. I know that's not helpful at all. I feel like most of mine that I've purchased for the size brushes I use have been around like maybe the $5 mark, but I believe it was Victoria Gedvias. She used the Silver Brush Black Velvet brushes, I think, and I wanted to try them for a really long time. They were just slightly more expensive, and especially with how much I liked the Princeton brushes, I was like, do I need to spend like $10 to $15 on a single paintbrush? But a couple years back, I did pick up a couple. I got one round and I think like a size 8 at one point in time. And then I went back and I got a round size 2. I love these brushes so much. I can't even begin to explain why. I don't know like a ton about brushes and what makes them fantastic. I know I personally don't want to use any like animal fibers in my brushes. I'd rather use synthetic fibers, just personal preference, because it feels weird. I don't know how they get like animal brush hairs, especially when it's like a squirrel. But I'm pretty sure it's probably not the most humane thing in the world, and it makes me feel weird. So I do prefer using synthetic brushes. And these ones are like so insanely nice. I am beyond grateful to live kind of close to a local art supply store that has just like really good prices on everything they sell. They have a huge selection of all different kinds of mediums, so like watercolors, gouache, they even have acrylic gouache, which is so lovely, acrylics, oils, etc. They have a huge selection, and everything is such good prices there. If you live in like the eastern Washington area, which I don't, I live in Idaho, unfortunately, but if you live in the eastern Washington area or just like anywhere around that, Spokane Art Supply is my favorite art supply store. They're locally owned and they're so nice, and they always have good prices on everything. Everything is under like the MSRP normal prices, which I don't understand how it works, but I'm so grateful because they have such a gorgeous selection of professional watercolor materials, from papers to actual paints, which they have like so many tubes of paints too, and they also have really nice brushes, and this is where I got my couple from. I haven't really needed to buy more than just 2 of these, honestly, because between my other Princeton brushes, I don't like use a ton of different kinds of brushes to begin with. I really just need like a couple different sizes of rounds and maybe a flat brush for when I'm doing watercolors, and I can just get what I want because I don't work on like a huge scale. I don't do any freaky techniques. So just with my 2 rounds of these brushes, I love them so much. I think in the future I'll probably get like maybe 1 or 2 different sizes, but I do have a lot of the Princeton Velvet Touch ones, so like I don't need a ton of brushes, and I feel like I cycle between maybe like 5 different watercolor brushes, so like I don't need a huge selection, but I cannot rave about these enough. They are such nice watercolor brushes. They are my favorite. I recommend them to everyone. If you're in a place where you can comfortably spend like $10 to $15 on a single watercolor brush, these would be what I would personally recommend. Love them. I've also been trying to make my videos a little bit on the longer end for a really long time throughout making YouTube videos over the years. I was really big on making shorter form YouTube videos just because I personally felt like I didn't have too much attention span for any kind of art video that was longer than like 10 minutes. For the longest time, I personally watched art YouTube videos as just the video itself. I wouldn't have it as like any kind of background sound or anything while I'm doing something. So I liked to consume videos that were more short form kind of content between like 8 to maybe 15 minutes. My sweet spot was like around 10 minutes. So I tried to make my personal YouTube videos around that size for the longest time. Given I had heard a lot of people say they preferred longer form YouTube videos, and I'm at the point now where like, honestly, I really don't even personally watch YouTube that much. Like, I've gotten into audiobooks so heavily, and so a lot of times when I'm doing art or doing anything, like chores around the house, whatever it may be, I just want to like listen to an audiobook while I'm doing my own thing, and that has consumed a lot of my time. But in doing that, I personally much so prefer long form content, which is terrible because like, especially with like Instagram Reels and stuff now, where that's something that is more popular, and YouTube Reels, YouTube Shorts, whatever they're called, are popular, and like something that you're quote unquote supposed to do for reach and growing your platforms. I hate short form content. I just feel like it's so impersonal, and that's something that I've always valued when it comes to making YouTube videos, is that YouTube just feels so much more personal, so much more intimate, and that's why I do voiceovers, because although sometimes it does pain me to do voiceovers because I don't know what to talk about, and sometimes it's just like really intimidating, I like the fact of it's like a much more intimate setting. You actually get to hear me. It feels so much more personal, and even like communicating in the comments on YouTube feels so much more personal because of the style of video versus short form content is like so weird. But I think because I personally have started consuming more long form content like audiobooks and podcasts and things along those lines, I've also grown into the habit of like when I do occasionally watch art videos, I like to have more long form content playing in the background while I'm doing something else, just so I can listen to someone yap and occasionally look up and see them drawing. So I definitely personally, in terms of like what I like to consume, have definitely fallen more into the trenches of like having long form content going on in the background just to primarily listen to it and just look a couple of times, which is how I like watching TV too. I like to just kind of glance up as I'm doing my own thing, because unfortunately in my brain I need to be doing multiple things at a time, and I can't just like sit down and watch TV, which I guess is good because multitasking means more things get done, and unfortunately I'm the kind of person who like really values productivity, and that's really tied into my self-worth. So I like to be doing things and at least doing something that my brain can consider productive, and that makes me feel like I'm not just like wasting my time doing nothing. Also, this does remind me, a couple of years ago, I used to be an absolute freak because I would consume so much YouTube content, both like art content and just like creators that I had watched for a really long time and so stuck around with them. But I used to watch all of the YouTube videos I watched, which was quite a few. I would watch YouTube every single day. I would stay caught up with my subscriptions. I would watch every single YouTube video except for Jenna Marbles because she deserved better at 2 times speed, because when that feature got released, I feel like that feature was for me at the time. I watched everything at 2 times speed, which is crazy because if you've ever watched YouTube videos at 2 times speed, if the person is talking like as fast as I'm talking right now, it's quick. It's a lot of words at once. I don't know how I did it. I did it so comfortably, and it got to the point where, because I was so accustomed to watching videos at 2 times speed, I just like couldn't watch them at 1 time speed. I don't know how in my life I only really realized I had ADHD like maybe a year ago, because I feel like the signs were like always there. I still don't know how I did the 2 times speed on like every single video I watched, though. That was crazy behavior. That was really crazy behavior. And I just remember like so many times, like my partner at the time would see me watching YouTube, and like my friends at the time might be over or like around me when I'm watching a YouTube video, and they were just like, hey Chrissy, like what the hell are you doing? How are you like consuming this at all? I don't know. There was something deeply wrong with me. I am very glad to be done with that, especially because like when I was at that point in my life, which makes it sound like it was like this really dark time. No, I was just weird. When I would do that, I honestly like would see a YouTube video that was over 20 minutes and I would be like, at 2 times speed, that's still like 10 minutes, and that's like a really long video. And sometimes I myself, watching someone's YouTube content at 2 times speed, would find myself getting like bored. And this was also like before TikTok really like blew up and was a popular thing, and before like short-term content was so popular on social media. So I was really ahead of my time. And again, I'm really glad I grew out of that, because I know like statistically, has TikTok and things like that ruined people's attention span? Yes, absolutely. And having everything at the access of your fingertips has done bad things for people as a whole. So I'm glad at least I've grown out of that. I also do have like a decent-ish attention span. I think I'm actually lying about that. I think that's not true at all, because I don't really watch things. I get like antsy when I'm just sitting down and watching something and not doing something with my hands. So I don't know if it's necessarily better, but at least I'm not out here watching videos on 2 times speed, because that was freak behavior. I try to do that occasionally now, especially when like following a tutorial or something. Like recently, my car, she's going through it. I I don't know why she's doing this to me, but I'm definitely turning into one of those people whose vehicles, like, don't do a lot of things that they're supposed to do. And so it's like the joke of like, oh, who's gonna drive? Oh, I'll drive, but hold on, I have to open the passenger door from inside to let you in, and then to roll down the window there's this like extra insane process, and half of my buttons don't work and stuff like that. That is unfortunately becoming my vehicle. My hatchback doesn't open. I think the little like spring bar things may have rusted. I don't know car terms at all. Do not come for me. Anytime I will be talking about vehicles, it's not gonna be the correct terms. It's not gonna make sense. But my hatchback doesn't open more than a couple inches and then experiences extreme resistance. And I'm not about to break it, but my hatchback doesn't open. My backside passenger side door does not open from the outside. If you want to open that door, you have to hit the button on the inside. And then recently, my driver's side window decided that we're just not going to work anymore. So I guess the motor broke in that. And it sounds like that would probably be expensive to replace, because anything car related is expensive. I asked about my side door not opening from the outside at one point in time to like a mechanic, and they were like, yeah, we'd have to like totally take the door apart to even see what's going on. And I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. But yeah, no. So like my driver's side window, the motor failed, I believe. And so I was looking up a video on how to repair it myself in case I was feeling really, really brave, because now I can't go through like drive-thrus, because I'm not going to open my door at a McDonald's drive-thru. First of all, that's not allowed. They don't want you to do that. Second of all, that is so embarrassing. I had to cave and get a car wash like a week ago because I was like, listen, like my car is not good. It was at a place that like people kind of like help you outside, and so I had to just straight up open my door, and as I was pulling up where you would normally start rolling your window down, I couldn't do that because my window does not roll down, and I had to get really close to this person before I popped open my door, and they were like staring at me like, what is this girl doing and why is her window not rolling down? Sir, it's because it doesn't anymore, okay? Will it ever get fixed? I don't know. I looked up a tutorial. I watched that tutorial on 2x speed. It looked like something I can technically do, but it seems intimidating. And so I'm just not gonna have a working window for a little bit because I don't want to pay someone to do it, and I'd have to buy a new motor myself and open my door and break off some plastic screws and reinstall some off-brand plastic screws because they don't sell like I don't know. Okay, it's this whole thing. It's terrible. I don't have enough money to get a new vehicle because everything's expensive, and the used car market is also like insane. I feel like the used car market has always been like a little insane. I feel like it's excessively insane right now because everything is retaining value so much. I've always wanted to own a Subaru because I live in the Pacific Northwest, and so it would be nice to have a Subaru. Everyone has a Subaru around here, or a giant lifted truck. But that's a different subject. Everyone has a Subaru. I also want a Subaru. I think they're so cute. I think they're so queer. I want a Subaru. But they've always really retained their value, and especially in this economy, they really do. And so as much as I would love to be able to like buy a newer vehicle, everything's expensive, and so I'll keep driving mine until she dies, which I really hope doesn't happen because that sounds like it's really stressful, and I don't have like a parental figure in my life to be like, help, my car like stopped working and I'm on the side of the road. I'd have to like call a tow truck myself, and I would be ugly crying and maybe have a panic attack. So fingers crossed my vehicle lasts a really, really long time. Fingers crossed that no other weird things stop working. Hopefully nothing more inconvenient than my driver's side window not rolling down. Now I can't go through drive-through pharmacies. I have to go inside. I can't go through like a coffee stand. I can't go to coffee stands. I have to go to like chains. I have a store. That's terrible. Being an adult is so much work. It's like really nice because you can like buy yourself a whole cake if you want to and just eat it out of the packaging. But also sometimes things go wrong and they're so expensive and so stressful. Oh, that is not for me. I'm just a girl. But thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to me yap. If you're interested in this palette, there will be a link in the description box below. We are so running short on time. I wish I had more time to praise this palette because I really, really do love this palette. The colors are gorgeous. Working with it was such a nice experience. And if you guys have tried Paul Rubens watercolors, let me know how your experience was. Did you like them? Did you love them? Let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one.